Today we have Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov. So he also is a student of Rabbi Akiva, and he says, "Ha'isa mitzvah achas." A person who performs one mitzvah, kaina loi paraklit echad. So paraklit obviously is not a Hebrew or Aramaic term as much as it's probably Greek. But what's interesting here is acquires for themselves an advocate. What's interesting here is the word ha'iseh. When we think about doing mitzvahs, right, this is a word that's used, but normally a person is either they fulfill a mitzvah, right, they're makayim a mitzvah. It's not an odd word, but it's not the only word. And I would say that if I was going to write this, I wouldn't have used this word. And I think part of what it's alluding to is the word oseh really means to form, right? Like the action of doing or creating. So a person who generates a mitzvah, they acquire for themselves, right, this advocate. And the mystical interpretation is that a person is actually creating angelic forces through these actions, both for the good, and then here, v'ha'over, one who transgresses, v'ha'over avera achas, one who transgresses one prohibition, kainaloi kategor. Kategor is a word that you find in the Talmud a lot. It's an accuser, echad, one accuser. So there is a concept. Well, we'll speak about the angels here for a second. There is a concept that we have when it comes to giving testimony. For standard things, we need to have two people, right? The verse says, "Al pi shnei edim yakum hadavar," right? On two things, the thing is established. I heard once a Rabbi was saying about Judaism that both Christianity and Islam acknowledge the 7 days of creation. The Sabbath for each one of them is a different day, right? Friday or Sunday. But the idea is that you have two kind of religions giving testimony to our Genesis narrative of 7 days of creation. But anyways, so the idea is that when it comes to bearing witness, which is what these kind of angelic creatures do, you need to have two of them. And this is what the tradition teaches about Friday night. For those who have accustomed to sing Shalom Aleichem, there's a special song we sing for the angels. We welcome them, we ask them to bless us, and then we actually say Tzeischem l'Shalom, that you should go in peace. There's a big discussion. Some people have accustomed to just say 3 out of the 4. They don't say Tzeischem because why would you want the angels to leave? There's some interpretations that it's actually, we're asking the weekday angels, right? That there's always shifts. If you remember from the time is such a blur. I don't remember if it's this week, it was last week, maybe it's next week. Jacob and the ladders. It's at some point near where we are, we will have read or we'll be reading the angels coming up and down, right? And so there was a geographical set of angels of Israel and not Israel. So the tradition teaches that on Friday night the angels come in, and there are 2 angels. I don't want to say good angel, bad angel, but each one has, like we've spoken about, Yitzhar Tov, Yitzhahara, people can use their own words, but there's the angel that's job it is to kind of encourage us or motivate us or inspire us, direct us to do the good, and there's another force that does the opposite. So when the tradition says Friday night, they walk in, both angels, and they look to see how Shabbos dik is it, right? Are people acknowledging the day? Is it perhaps an awareness of the day being special? Is there special food? Is there special tablecloth? Are there candles? Whatever a person's Shabbos practice is there an acknowledgement of Shabbos for Shabbos? And if it's the way it's supposed to be, so then the good angel says, I give a bracha that it should be like this next week. And the angel that's in the opposition is forced to say Amen. And so to the opposite, if God forbid, right, a person forgot that it was Shabbos, the angel that's not on our side gives the same bracha, and the other angel is forced to say Amen. So we have over here as well kind of this recognition that even though it's in the singular, that a person does one mitzvah, they've acquired for themselves one kind of advocate, that advocate's story is corroborated by this other one. And so too, God forbid, in the opposite, that the angel is actually created through the action. And so I think it's a help, for me at least, it's a helpful vision if we think about having a witness on our behalf, right? Same thing for someone who writes a letter of recommendation. So depending on who that person is, like actually is what determines the weight of the credibility of the letter or of the testimony. You know, you have a person who has a wonderful reputation. They're an expert in their field, right? They're actually, you know, perhaps written books and have, you know, testified publicly on a national level about certain things. So they come and they advocate on your behalf. Like, I know this person, I trust this person, so that means something to somebody who says, actually, we just met on the subway on the way to court, right? Or this person offered me money, right? So when we think about the intentionality that we bring to the actual mitzvah, not all mitzvahs are the same, meaning not all 613 are weighed the same. And we saw that in earlier Mishnayos, that we don't know the true value of the mitzvah. But even the way in which we approach each and every mitzvah is a spectrum. We can be present, we can be distracted. We can do it with a smile. We can be really annoyed that we have to do this. I remember when I was a kid, I got schlepped to shul. Wasn't always so happy to go, right? It's the same prayers, the same amount of time being there, but doing it with a smile and doing it with like, I can't wait for there to be a kiddush is a different experience. And as a result, the spiritual kind of testimony, the advocate or the opposite that will testify will either be a kind of bolstered, full-bodied kind of witness, or the whole thing will be very weak, right? That the argument of look, the person did the thing, but it was they fetched it out. So that's part of it. All right, so go back to the Mishnah, and then we'll finish up and we'll open it up for questions. Tshuva u'maisim tovim kisrim pifnei ha-paranios. So this is already a kind of a low-level motivation. Paranios are like the consequences. They translate it here as punishment. A person does something that they shouldn't have done. We have to account for it. A person regrets it and says, you know what, that was a poor choice. Given the opportunity now, I would have done something different. I didn't realize the person would be offended. I offended them. If I could have that conversation over, I would do it in a way where I wouldn't have hurt their feelings, right? So tshuva, repentance, and meisim tovim, good actions, are a shield. I don't know that that's how I would translate it, but that's how they translate it. I don't have a better word. Let's see here. Could be the Hertz has a better one. They use the same word. Okay, we'll go with shield. Bibnei haparanios, right in front of punishment. Again, the punishment here is not about, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to burn, I'm going to go to hell. Like that. That's not, I think, here what the punishment is. I think it means of the consequence that if a person has done something that has a negative effect on themselves, on other people, on community, on society, on their relationship with God. So we want to undo those consequences, meaning we want to shield ourselves from the consequences of that negativity. Rabbi Yochanan, and again, each person has a different kind of vision of what that is, but hopefully it motivates us to put in the effort. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan Sandler Omer, he says, Kol Knessia Shehi L'Shem Shemayim. Knessia is like base Knesses. It's like a house of gathering. So any sort of assembly or group of people, Shehi L'Shem Shemayim, that is for the sake of heaven. Soifa L'Hiskayim, in the end will have some sort of sustainability. But if it's not for the sake of heaven, in the end, it's not going to endure. So I think we've spoken already a few times that the word, according to the Medrash, the word shemayim is actually a contraction. That might not be the right English word. It's two words which are kind of compound, it's made up of two words. It's made of the word aish and the word mayim. And the yud gets dropped. But the idea that heaven itself is made up of both fire and water, but it's able to coexist. So even though things which are mutually exclusive and normally either one will evaporate or the other will be extinguished, if a person is able to have a group of people, they can vehemently disagree. But if it's for the sake of heaven, so then those arguments are also Torah. Those arguments of like, I think this is what God wants. No, I think that this is what God wants. So those are spiritual conversations, and therefore tap into that plane of eternity. However, things which are not l'shem shamayim, it's personal. It's not about the pursuit of the truth. It's about power. It's about all the icky things in the universe. So then, like, nobody's going to remember it, and the consequences of that might exist. But it's going to be in the realm of the physical world. And more than that, like it won't endure in that it's in the end the truth wins. Like in the end, righteousness will prevail and good will overcome. So I think it's interesting the way in which these two are put here together. When we think about the struggle of unity, it's not easy. It's not easy to get along with each other. It's not even so easy to have a lot of self-confidence with ourselves, that we like hanging out with ourselves. We don't have a choice so much, right? We're stuck with who we are. We can try to improve on it. But the point is that when a person is saying, listen, I'm trying. I'm trying. So then, let's stop the share here. I think this is a really important point. When a person feels like in relationship with another person, a relationship with their boss, coworkers, God, when we see and we can recognize that people are putting in the effort, so then it's much easier to be compassionate. It's much easier to be forgiving. It's much easier to let go of the fact that things fell short. They didn't end up the way they were supposed to happen, right? When somebody doesn't care, it hurts. When somebody blows us off or like they ignore us and we feel erased or invisible, it's deeply painful. When we are seen by the fact that the person is trying really hard and they have their own limitations, they have their own struggles, but like they're prioritizing it, then there's actually a way in which we can be much more forgiving. And I think that's kind of one of the connections in the Mishnah, that when a person recognizes that perhaps there are things that have fallen short, when they're willing to kind of increase the meisim tovim, the good deeds, right? We'll say, okay, that was a mistake. I want to make it up to you. I want to contribute more to the world, right? So then there's a way in which that actually protects, right, the relationship and can solidify it. And I think that's also part of the teaching that continues about recognizing the intentionality of that. If it's l'shem shamayim, that when people are in relationships and they're investing, so then like if people are willing to invest in the relationship, they haven't written it off yet. So like there's sustainability to that relationship, or at least there's the potential for it. To contrast that, very early on in the Genesis narrative, God says to the snake, as part of the curse, you're now going to, eat from the dirt of the ground. And the commentators ask, what kind of curse is that, right? There's like an all-you-can-eat buffet wherever you go. And nobody wants to eat dirt, right? But in terms of if that's really what you're going to be eating, and I understand it means different things, but why is that such a curse? And the way in which the rabbis understand it, the most common explanation is that that God wanted nothing to do with the snake. And so by saying here, you can eat without having to struggle, without having to come to me and ask, right? To not have to, to pray. One of the reasons why we have such prayer practices is that it connects us to God. God says, I don't want to have a connection to you. I'm cursing you. Go, you don't need me. Like, here's all the money that you need to survive. Here are the resources, but I don't want to hear from you. Don't write to me, don't call, right? And so the opposite of that is to be constantly engaged in the struggle. That, okay, like this moment wasn't the best moment, but now what? What can I do about it? And that l'shem shamayim, to try to reach, that place of heaven, of coexistence. We are physical and spiritual. God is just spiritual. God creates the physical. It's not, right? The body and our soul, it's a horrible shidduch. It's not a natural fit. It takes work to coexist. And just like to coexist with any other human, it takes work. There are ups and downs. We think that that it's worth it to be in the relationships. And I think this is all to say that when things are difficult, right, the way in which we can show that we're invested and that we're committed is by reinvesting and recommitting. That's, I think, what the Mishnah is teaching us. Thoughts on this? Thoughts on the Mishnah? Yeah, Chana. Just unmute yourself if you can.
Can I just see the text for a second?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
This way, how it's easier.
Yeah. It's technology here. Yeah.
So just a few observations.
Please.
One is that this whole mission, there are like two parts to it. One part is about the individual, and the other one is about the community, because it's an assembly of people. And the other one is that, particularly in the first one, where he's sort of equating it with almost like a court. The Parkliktut and Categoria is like, if I imagine that's what it was in Greek times, because that's what we're using now in the Hebrew language. And that he's sort of equating it to a court where if you do right, you know, you gain someone on your side, and if you do wrong, you know, they're gonna judge you, you know.
Yeah.
And basically, you know, that's what I was getting out of it.
Yeah, that's absolutely very true. And I think one of the things that is helpful, that the rabbis in the times of the Mishnah thought was helpful, is trying to kind of take, I don't know if it's a partial adoption, but my guess is that everybody had a very visual picture of what those courts look like, and said, like, you know, you're also going to have this, you know, heavenly court, you know, day of reckoning. And I think it's really interesting to think about, and this is, I think one of the differences in kind of mainstream kind of theology and the theology that comes out of the rabbinic tradition is that when we think about being a good person, we all define that in different ways. I hope that we all see ourselves as good people, but I can't tell you how many times when I used to engage people in this space a long time ago, I've since matured and realized that these are not productive conversations. But when people would say, like, what do you mean? Like, the majority of what I do is like really beneficial for the world. And so, like, it's certainly more than 51%. And like, that's the threshold of being good, right? More good than not good. Because if you think about the image of a scale, right, that, and this is what we have in Rosh Hashanah, like God weighs, right? And we have this deep in rabbinic literature about being, a Benoni is being 50-50, right? And really the world, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, person should see the world as being completely balanced. And all you have to do is tap, right? Could you imagine going to school where getting a 51 was an A plus? Like, you just have to get more right than wrong.
I would have passed.
I would have passed. We would all have been straight A students, right? So like there's an aspect of that is true, right? That the world is, but if you, it's a horrible, could you imagine if like half of your experiences in the day were painful? It would be a horrible way to live. If half the people treated you really badly, it would be a horrible way to live. So the way that the rabbis understand kind of the process of judgment is that we are judged on all of the things that we did that were not good. And there's like an accounting, and there's some time where the soul gets cleansed from that. And then there's this completely different list of all of the good things. And then like, that's this eternal kind of infinite skews towards goodness, where God is generous even in that, where the time to deal with the things that were not ideal is finite, where the time to reap the benefit of the positive is eternal. So then it's like not actually like, you know, you take one and you subtract from the other, and then like you're left with whatever you have. You're actually like we're responsible for all the things. And that's part of God being the true judge, is that nothing is forgotten. So when we do things that when we do things that we're not thrilled with, it doesn't go away unless we do something about it. If we hurt somebody's feelings, we can feel bad. But if the other person is not engaged, and we don't apologize, and we don't like make them feel that we understand that it wasn't intentional, or if it was intentional, the reason our motivations were wrong, right? Then that kind of stays there, and the consequences of that stay there. And I think that there is something deeply empowering about this, that we are really responsible, that we have this way to go into the past, and to try to alter that. The Gemara says a person repents out of love. Those missteps, those transgressions now become merits, because they've now motivated us to put more effort into the relationship. And there's this intimacy with God. That's at least between the individual and God. When it comes to the things that we've done with other people, that's a much more complicated reality. People don't live forever. Not everybody forgives us. And the Code of Jewish Law speaks extensively and in great detail of at what point are we responsible. You know, I have a friend now. He won't speak to me because one of my rabbis is upset with me because of the work that I'm doing. And it says in the Code of Jewish Law that normally you have to ask for forgiveness from somebody 3 times. After 3 times, like, you're off the hook. Like, if it's sincere, you went, you said, listen, I'm really sorry. They said, I don't care, I don't forgive you. You go through that, right? There's all sorts of things that are brought down. But it says there, but if it's a person's Rabbi, right? So then, like, you have to keep asking. You have to keep asking, because that's a relationship that you don't, if you've offended your teacher, like that's like a big deal. So it's complicated because my Rebbe won't take my phone calls, right? So it's not that I'm not willing to. So I said, like, if he's not willing to talk to me, it can't be that he's my Rebbe anymore, right? Like, it's the relationship is severed if he won't talk to me. So that's my own mishigas. But that sensation of feeling responsible for our actions, I think is made more real when we think that we actually create in the spiritual realm this creation that's based on the action, this accuser, God forbid, or this advocate. I think it's a very powerful image that we make a blessing and we're like paying attention. You get this really big, slick, powerful, whatever the image is of the type of person you want to bear witness on your behalf, like that happens. And God forbid the opposite. We can fool our teachers and we can fool our friends and bosses, and you don't even know if I'm wearing yoga pants, right? We live in a world where it's a function of perception. I was just at a Hartman thing. It was hilarious. I was just at Hartman, and Jesse, you can still record. This is not me. This is still fine. But like we had this hour and a half lecture from this lovely woman about something, and then we had to like this round table. And the person who was kind of moderating it said, okay, before our next, round table, we're all on Zoom. If everyone just wants to stand up and like stretch. And it was hilarious to see who refused to stand up. It's like, this person's wearing shorts, this person who knows. But so like we are able to kind of deceive or, we're able to present ourselves to people in a way that people often get only a partial view, which is good, right? It's good that people should be only partially visible. But we can't do that to God. And God knows the intentions. God knows whether or not, we're present, whether or not our heart is in it. And so I think the Mishnah is trying to make this very vivid, that the moment is not just the moment. There's a permanence to it in a spiritual realm. It's why the work we do makes a difference, because it does actually have a lasting effect. And the things that we say to other people, they often remember. Whether it's good or it's bad. I think we can all attribute, right, a lot of our success to people who believed in us in different moments. And perhaps in those moments, they didn't even know how impactful their words were going to be. Whether in a written form, it was a teacher, right? We owe a lot of people a lot of gratitude. But we also have to understand that the things that we do also have impacts. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's unintentional. But if we take it seriously, that every interaction, every encounter has the potential to really affect universes, so then like we can be more present with it. All right, friends. I hope that people can feel present with the positive. Susan, did you have a question or a statement or no? Yeah, great. So we live in a really broken world. Yeah, Doug.
Are we ever going to talk about the Rebbe who won't speak to you?
I don't know. I need to get a therapist. That's the bottom line. I don't have time. I don't, there's not a couch big enough to talk about all the issues, but it's upsetting. It's disappointing to me. It's disappointing. We were very close for 20 years. He gave me my third ordination. He's since revoked it. He didn't even tell me. Somebody, he published something and then he told me, and then somebody shared it with me. It was not, in my opinion, the way to go about it. And it's upsetting because I feel like I'm living a life that embodies his teachings. I don't feel like I'm in contradiction at all. Like his whole, everything I've ever learned from him was about being authentic in relationship to God. He's a person. I mean, so the Talmud is a really huge amount of work. I've finished it. It's an amazing accomplishment. He's finished the Talmud over 100 times. He's an amazing human being who's like in a really very, 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 very special place. And I love him. I love him to death. And I don't love him less because of this. I'm eternally grateful for the reality of God that he gave me in his own modeling. But that's what I've learned from him, that God is real and that we need to be real with God. And I feel like that's all I'm saying, is that we need to acknowledge the reality of the experience of people who are not just cis, straight, white men, right? There's a lot of different experiences. Theirs are no less real. And if we deny the space of that acknowledgement, then the relationship with God can't be real. And so it's all very upsetting. And of first world problems, like, It's part of being a human, and I think, part the mature. I don't know if this is the mature response or not. It could be I'm just taking the easy road, but for me, like, we take the good from the mixture, and there's no shortage of good there. And the parts that don't feel good, I sit within, they're unpleasant. But we can't force people to be our friends. All we can do is be friendly to them and hope that they reciprocate. And he knows. I mean, his wife, I'm sure, has told him. I've called him many times, but she won't put him on the phone. And yeah, I mean, the world's broken. The world's broken in ways that God is so hidden that we don't have clarity, that we can't even, there's no way to even test what the truth is, right? I believe that I'm right. He believes that he's right. What's the mechanism, right, for trying to say, listen, it is the Shem Shemayim. And I think he would even acknowledge that it's the Shem Shemayim. My friend, who's now, like, he says, I know that you believe, right? I don't think that you're like a heretic and that you're, meaning he thinks I'm a heretic, but he doesn't think that like I'm doing it out of anger, right? He thinks I'm in opposition to God, but he thinks I'm in opposition to God because I love God and I'm misguided, which is already good. And so there is an anger there. But what's so frustrating is that nobody will he won't discuss the issues with me. Like, we can't engage in the world of ideas because he doesn't want to talk about it, because he thinks that a certain thing, he doesn't want to change his mind. He's not open to having a conversation because he doesn't want his mind to be changed. And so this is where we are. So I would say if we were in disagreement, it would be a machalikus l'shem shamayim, because he also thinks that this is, I know that what his worldview is also coming from a place of thinking that that's what God wants from him. And so I think what the Mishnah is saying is, when you have two people who think that it's l'shem shamayim, if they're really open to being for the sake of heaven, and they're open to having the conversation to say, how could we possibly try to figure out what God wants from us? And if you're willing to engage in that conversation, reasonable people can disagree. Right, but if you're not willing to have the conversation, so then it's no longer about heaven. It's about the privilege, and it's about the power, and it's about the institutions. So, well, I feel better. Yeah, Doug.
I'm just glad that you're giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm old enough and I've been around enough to know that the negativity and the things that you bear against another, it's not good. It's more crap you have to carry. And I don't want to give anybody so much space that they can like burden me. I have my own burdens. Like it's like I'm very blessed. I'm so blessed. And life is hard. On a good day, life is hard. On a good day, and today was a hard day, and this week is a hard week. And with it all, I feel very, very blessed. But like, I don't have extra bandwidth that, like, people write things about me. Okay, great. So like, I'm glad that like it's, in my head, it's pathetic. Like, I take up so much space that you feel like you have to write this thing. You don't take enough space that I feel like I have to respond. So yeah, I think that we are all the main characters in our stories, and I think some stories are better told from the scars than they are from the wounds. And for me, honestly, this is still an open wound, and I don't know that it heals. And I have wounds that, like, and I think we all do. I think we have some wounds that like it's always raw. Like it's maybe there's a small covering that like the lemon juice doesn't hurt as much, right? But there are always things that like it hurts. It hurts. There are people that are no longer here. There are things. So time provides a callus. But I've never said this before, but I think it's a good thought. And on this we'll conclude. Like, let time create the callus, but like don't you become callous, right? It's like we need to be able to feel. Like, if not, we're not human anymore. So we all carry some of that pain. It needs to be manageable and keep it in a healthy place. But it lets us know that we're still alive. All right, friends. Sorry for all the negativity. See everybody tomorrow, God willing, and have a good, happy day. Chase the joy, find the joy. There's a lot of joy in the world. Take care.